Hi everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I'm showing you an upside down peach cake. Upside down cakes are one of my favorite categories of baking because the decoration is built right in. I'm using peaches today. It's just like a really easy, fun, delicious cake for summer made with polenta. Also like fancy enough to entertain or bring to someone's house. When I was thinking about a polenta cake, what I really wanted was to translate the texture of like cooked polenta into a cake and not just like dried cornmeal. And by cooking the polenta, what's great about it is not only are you introducing this cool like porridgey texture to the cake, but you're also adding a lot of liquid that the cake couldn't otherwise like hold on to, because we're par cooking it, it like holds on to the moisture, and then that gets added to the cake, and it just makes for this great like delicious moist cake. Ingredients. So for the fruit layer, these are local peaches, some demerara sugar, it's 1/3 cup, and I'm going to use some lemon juice. For the cake, I have 10 tablespoons unsalted butter. We're going to include lemon zest, all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, some vanilla extract, 1/2 cup of coarse-ground cornmeal, aka polenta, kosher salt, baking powder, 2 eggs, 1 1/4 cups whole milk. I have my 9-inch cake pan. I have already greased it with some butter and added a piece of parchment paper to the bottom because, as I said, it's an upside down cake, so you want to guarantee that you can unmold it easily. So the parchment's really important. I would not use a cake pan that has a removable bottom because it will probably leak. Then I am using my Made In stainless clad Saucier. I am going to use this twice. I'm going to do first to reduce the juices from the peaches. Peaches are like a very, very juicy fruit, and they can like kind of water out the cake. And I'm also going to use it for cooking my polenta. So kind of 2-step process there, and then just a couple bowls for mixing. And oh, and my stand mixer behind me. Easier to put it together that way. Before I get into the recipe, I want to thank our friends at Made In for sponsoring this episode. I use Made In's full line of cookware, from the ceramic clad nonstick to the carbon steel, but the most used cookware in our house is the stainless clad. I love the 5-ply construction. It's very heavy duty. It's made in Italy and the US. This is the Saucier. This is one of the most versatile pieces you'll find. This is a 2-quart. You can see how it has these curved sides. I love it because when I'm doing things on the stove top, like cooking a custard or a pastry cream or a pudding, there's no dead zones in the whisk, so I don't burn it. It has really heavy duty construction, so there's even heating. It's great for also doing things like saucing pasta. So this is something I reach for constantly. Hope you check it out. It's a really popular item that's frequently sold out, but is back in stock now. So you can learn more about the stainless collection and the full line of Made In cookware if you go to the link in my description below. So I want to thank our friends at Made In, and now let's get back to the recipe. It is a rare fruit that you can just like throw into a recipe and it will be fine. For peaches, which are so juicy when they're ripe, and like this is something that I would not make with fruit that's not like perfectly in season, you have to, this is the term I use, is fruit management. Like you have to basically like pre-treat it. Otherwise, what could very likely happen is all of the moisture is going to start to release in the cake, and you get like a squidgy texture, like a wet, unbaked part of the cake, which I don't love. One of the easiest ways to kind of like pre-treat fruit or like manage the moisture content is to macerate, meaning you have to cut it first to like expose the flesh, and then the sugar pulls out the juices. So that's what we're gonna do. I have my really beautiful, look at how nice this peach is. I love ripe peach texture. It's just unlike anything else. So I'm going to thinly slice this into thin wedges and add them to my bowl. And I'm using the smaller fruit because when I'm going to be like arranging this into the bottom of the pan for the upside down layer, it's actually nice to have smaller slices because you can like fit more rows or rings or whatever kind of pattern you're doing. As you can see, I did not peel the peaches. The skins have a lot of flavor and they lend like a nice color. A lot of the tartness is in the skin, so I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to add some lemon juice, but first I'm going to take off a little bit of zest because that's going to go into the cake. Maybe 2 teaspoons or so. So this I'm going to add to my sugar for the cake. I'm gonna just toss this quickly together so that the zest doesn't like start to clump as it's exposed to the air. And we'll come back to this. So now I'm going to add the juice of about half of the lemon. If it's like a decent sized lemon that's decently juicy, it's usually around 2 tablespoons. And now I'm gonna add sugar. This is 1/3 cup of demerara sugar. If you don't have demerara, because there's granulated in the cake, and if you're like, I don't wanna have to get 2 different kinds of sugar, just use granulated here. Now I'm going to very gently toss this. I just wanna get the slices kind of gently coated. I don't wanna beat them up too much. There's already a lot of liquid that's starting to pool in the bottom of the bowl. And this is why you wanna use like ripe in season peaches. So we're gonna set this aside. Now I'm gonna clear this off and we are going to cook our polenta. I wanna get my saucepan under medium heat. I'm gonna add my milk. This is 1 1/4 cups whole milk. So I'm gonna let this come up to a simmer. I'm gonna take my 1/2 cup of polenta and whisk it in, just streaming it in little by little. This is to prevent big lumps from forming. So what's really nice about the saucier is those sloped curved sides make it so that, especially when you're using a whisk, which is a rounded tool, there are no dead zones. It's just really, really nice to use this style of pan. Polenta, when you're making like Italian polenta, you have to sit there for like 20 minutes and cook it until the corn is tender. But here, we don't really need to do that. We're just cooking it to this stage. It just took like a minute. The cornmeal has absorbed the milk, and I have this porridgey texture, and that's all. We don't have to cook it any further. It's all sort of one consistency. So I'm gonna turn this off. I'm going to whisk in a little bit of vanilla extract. And essentially what this mixture now is my liquid ingredients. So when you're making a cake, it's like you start with your butter and your sugar, you add your eggs, and then you alternate liquid and dry ingredients. This is now my liquid component.
No egg?
No, there's egg. I said egg, right?
Yeah, but you didn't put eggs in this.
Yeah, but eggs don't count as when you're adding the liquid. It's just it's a separate step.
Okay.
All right, so I'm adding my little bit of vanilla. I'm gonna scrape this into a separate bowl and set this aside to cool. Let me give this a rinse. I would say it's been 20 minutes, 15 minutes that the fruit's been macerating. There's quite a bit of liquid in the bottom. So now what I want to do is strain the fruit into my saucier because I want to separate the liquid. I'm going to let it drain, and then actually I'm going to also just leave the fruit over the bowl, and I can add any additional juice that collects from the bowl back into the saucier. So now I'm going to grab my prepared cake pan that has the parchment in the bottom. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to turn this on, and I want to just reduce this until it's really thick and syrupy. So I just want to simmer it.
Smells like peaches.
So this is reduced by probably a little more than half. I'm going to pour it into the bottom of my prepared cake pan, and it's nice and thick and syrupy. I'm done cooking. I want to let this kind of spread around in the bottom, and it has this beautiful rosy color, and this is going to turn into this nice like shiny, glossy kind of glaze for the cake and for the fruit on the top. I'm going to start arranging my fruit in the bottom of the pan, and I think I'm going to do like a rosette and do kind of concentric circles of peach slices.
Does the pattern matter? Will it change the flavors?
It's totally up to you, like how kind of like fussy you want to be with it. If you want to sit here and make some like beautiful pattern, that's great. You could do rows. It's really, really up to you. If you're kind of over it, you could usually just dump the fruit in and make sure that like it was mostly, on its like cut side, and that would be fine too.
You're doing multiple layers. It's a
Well,
two-story building.
I was just kind of filling in like a little hole. I actually ended up using all of the fruit, which is great. So here is my layer, my fruit layer. I'm gonna set this aside, bring in my stand mixer, and then the rest of the cake comes together really, really easily. So here I have everything for the cake batter itself. I'm gonna start by mixing together my dry ingredients. I was gonna mix it in a bowl, but now I'm out of glass bowls. So I'm gonna just shake everything in a quart container. I have some baking powder and some kosher salt. I have 2 room temperature large eggs. Anytime you're making a butter-based cake that starts with room temp butter that you're creaming with the sugar, you want to have room temp eggs. And now I'm gonna add my butter into my mixer. You could very easily do this with a hand mixer, and if you don't mind like a little bit of like mixing time, you could do it by hand also. All right, so it's actually 10 tablespoons of butter, so I have 2 extra tablespoons right here. All right, now I have that sugar where I added the grated lemon zest. I want to just go back in with my fingertips and really work this mixture to get the zest fully incorporated into the sugar. The like oils in the lemon peel start to release, and it just gives it a lot of flavor. So now we're going to start by mixing together my sugar and butter. I have the paddle attachment on. I'm going to start it on medium. And I want to let this get light and fluffy. It's going to take like a couple minutes. The sugar and butter mixture is really light and fluffy, so now I'm going to add the eggs one at a time on medium speed. And the reason we want the eggs room temperature is because the butter is room temp, and if the eggs were cold, it would hit the butter, it would cause the butter to harden and kind of seize, and then we lose the texture that we want. All right, so the second egg goes in. Okay, so the next step is to add my dry ingredients and my wet ingredients, which is really just my polenta mixture, which is cooled, and I'm gonna alternate them. So I basically gave this a little stir. You just wanna kind of like work it a little bit just to make sure there's no lumps that formed. You can see it's very, very thick. So now I'm gonna add about 1/3 of my dry ingredients. Oh, let me turn the speed down, turn it down to low. Now I'm going to add half of my polenta mixture. And wait until that's well incorporated. Then half of my remaining dry, aka 1/3 of the total. The remaining polenta. And once that is incorporated, my remaining dry ingredients. All right, so once you see that flour mixture disappear, stop the mixer, and then I'm gonna go by hand just to fold everything together. Some of the structure of this cake comes from like the starch in the cornmeal itself. So has a relatively low flour content, so you're not at risk really of over mixing this batter. Corn has no gluten. So I like to just fold everything together by hand, mostly to scrape the bottom and sides, just to make sure there's no unincorporated flour. And often you'll get like a pocket of butter at the bottom. So I just want to make sure that everything is even. Now I'm going to scrape this into my pan, and one thing I like to do with upside down cakes is to dollop the batter on top rather than just pour everything in. Sometimes it can cause the fruit to shift a little bit, and I want to maintain the pattern that I created here. So I'm just kind of dolloping the batter all over. My oven is on 350. I'm just going to use a little offset spatula to smooth the batter into a single layer. And it's really easy to do because it's mostly distributed, and I'm not disturbing the fruit underneath. I'm just going back to the spatula. Okay, hold on. All right, so this is gonna go into the oven at 350, and I'm gonna bake until the top is golden brown and a cake texture comes out clean. Okay, so you can see that the surface is a little bit domed, it's golden brown, there is some like light cracking in the center, and it's springy to the touch. So this is done. I wanna let it cool in the pan for just about 10 minutes. Now with an upside down cake, it's important that you don't unmold it like straight from the oven, because the cake is super delicate and it could kind of crack and break. But you also don't want to wait for it to fully cool in the pan, because those like sugary juices from the fruit are gonna harden at some point. So if you let it harden in the pan, it's gonna be really hard to get out. So like 10 minutes or so of cooling is just right, and then we're gonna take it out of the pan and let it fold coolly on the rack. So it's been 10 minutes or so. The cake has pulled away from the sides a little bit. I'm gonna use my offset spatula just to cut around for safety. and make sure that there's no sticking around the sides. And now to invert it, I'm going to grab the pan with one hand and then put the rack over top, and then I flip both of them together. The other reason you want to let it rest is because you want the juices that are underneath to have a chance to like cool and tighten up, so that as soon as you like flip it, all the juices don't not only run off, but then like run onto your hands and burn you, which is not pleasant. There it goes. Lift this off. Whoa, pretty. Parchment stayed in the pan. This is still really hot. There's a lot of steam coming off of it. I want to let this really kind of fully cool, but it looks so pretty. I love how leaving the peach skin on gave the slices like a little red border that kind of bleeds into the fruit. It looks great. I wish I had a little whipped cream for this, but I don't. It's been a long week.
Why?
You have it in the fridge. It's just
No,
in liquid form. I saw it.
no, I'm
It's
good.
full, actually.
No, I don't want to make it.
Why do you want whipped cream on it?
I mean, whipped cream basically improves every cake a little
What
bit.
about just cream?
I'm gonna taste it
What about a crab cake?
plain. All right, forget I said anything about whipped cream. All right, so I'm cutting the cake. It is a little bit warm still. One thing that's great about stone fruit when you bake with it is baking tends to concentrate not only the sugars but also like the acids. So like it gets sweeter and more tart. So it almost, and it just tastes like candy. It's so good. So here's this very nice slice of cake. It has this kind of like porridgey consistency. See how delicious it looks. All right, so I'm gonna taste it. It's so tender because a lot of the sort of like starches are coming from the cornmeal and not the flour. So it has this like incredibly delicious texture. And I love that the fruit is totally intact, but soft enough to like cut through with a fork. Between the fruit and the cake itself, it's like no squidginess. It's not like the fruit released all of its liquid into the cake and then that part didn't really bake through. I don't really want that texture here.
That's called squidginess?
I think it's called squidginess. This is incredibly delicious. It actually makes kind of a great breakfast cake because it's not too sweet, and if you're going to serve it for dessert, a little vanilla ice cream would be really, really good.
Or whipped cream.
Or whipped cream. This really is the perfect dessert for summer peaches, so I would go to the farmer's market and get them while you still can. I want to thank our friends at Made In for sponsoring this episode. Check out the full line of stainless clad, the ceramic clad non-stick, and the carbon steel. I love the Saucier. It's such a versatile piece of kitchen equipment. It's been out of stock for a while, but it's now back. So go to madeincookware.com, go to the link in the description below, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.